Okay, thanks so much everyone for coming. It's a really good turnout, I really appreciate it. So yeah, I'm from Weal. For those that don't know, we are a think and do tank based in Scotland. Pro-independence, we've been going since the independence referendum, and we research and produce policy ideas for how we can do things radically different. So everything from the economy, education, housing, banking, you name it. And then we campaign on the issues that we advocate for. So this is our most recent project. As has been explained, we've called it Our Common Home, which is a Green New Deal for Scotland. The concept behind the name is Our Common Home, Scotland, the planet. It's our common home, and that's what needs to be saved. So I'll say that this is absolutely the most exciting project that I've ever been part of, and it's also the most hopeful that I've felt since 2014. I actually reread the book over the weekend just to remind myself for coming tonight, and it reminded me a lot about the beauty of independence and how it was this incredible moment, our kind of political awakening, if you like. And after decades of experiencing ravaged neoliberalism and years of austerity, we had this manifestation of what Mark Fisher called collective depression, paralysed by this kind of acceptance that nothing was going to change and that there was no alternative and nothing new could be born. But obviously independence changed all that, and we had these incredible discussions about what society would look like and what an economy could be run if it was actually for people. And a vision of what an alternative could look like really started to take shape. But I would say we didn't have this in 2014, and it's only by working on this now that I'm more hopeful than ever that an alternative is possible, and this is what it looks like. So this plan doesn't only transition us to a zero carbon nation, which completely stops our impact that we're having on climate change. We'll transition to zero carbon, but it also, not just climate justice, it's about social justice. So this is about eradicating poverty, eradicating inequality, making it a thing of the past. And it's basically putting an end to neoliberalism. It's the most comprehensive, well thought out plan that I've seen that's out there, and as far as we're aware, it's the only plan that's been fully costed that goes to this extent as well. And yeah, it's a bit dreary, but we do need to talk about it. People that we speak to everywhere are terrified, feeling hopeless and powerless, watching Australia burning. The last time I checked, the Amazon has now burned the equivalent of 8.4 million football pitches. And people dying from hurricanes, droughts, heats, mostly from the countries that have had the least amount to do with this. So this is obviously about global justice too. And I'd say that, so I'm actually pregnant as well, right? So this is quite a personal thing for me, but I know a lot of people, academics, economists, that have looked at the facts and said, I'm not going to have children, which is a terrifying state of affairs. And so what I would say is that for me, what this is about, and I'm pretty much putting everything into this campaign, is that this isn't the time to give up. I say that this is the total opposite. This is the time to fight harder than we ever have. And what I hope this gives you is militant optimism. And I'd say that this is a weapon of progress. Something we should be grabbing with everything in our power. And actually, it could be argued that the existing system is coming down on its knees. The Financial Times leading advertisement at the moment, if you've seen, is capitalism, time for a reset. So I think that says a lot. So what's the plan? First off, it's worth saying that most organisations and political parties that have started to look at this have started with a target first, which is understandable. We've been told we've got a decade to to sort this out, so it makes total sense. But what Common Weal done is we started with, okay, what's the problem? What is Scotland contributing to this problem, and how do we change it? And we worked out what needed done, and then we worked out how long it was going to take. So, and this isn't to diminish the urgency of the matter, completely on the contrary. This is the most urgent crisis that we've faced, and this is a once in a generation time that we're going to do it. We may as well work out how we're going to do it properly, if we're only going to do it this once. So for this is a 25-year plan, and we've costed it at 170 billion, which may sound shocking, but it's more than half of that we paid for the bank bailout. So if we can afford it for that, we can definitely afford it for this. But if you do read it, and I would encourage you can read it the whole way through, you don't have to buy the book, it's free online, is that it will more than pay for itself, because what this is a massive kind of engineering project, building industry and infrastructure which will create hundreds of thousands of jobs. We won't have unemployment for a generation, and what that will produce in revenue will more than pay for it. And the other thing to make you aware is this isn't just Common Weal researchers, so every section that we've said need transformed, there was a working group formed, and it was experts in every field which got together and they looked at every single possible solution, and then they worked out what they were going to do based on sustainability, the long term, what was best for Scotland, to have the most positive impact on the environment and socially. They took a holistic view in all of them. So all the areas that we are saying need totally transformed so we can become zero carbon, you've got buildings, heating, electricity, transport, food, resources, land, trade, learning, and us, as in us, culture, behavioural change. And what you do when you're reading this and approaching each of these topics is that the reason why each of these causes a problem, not only for the environment but socially as well, is that private companies have bought them over and they've taken over the control of them, how they're planned, how they're managed, how they're organised, and therefore they work in the interests of maximum profit over the shortest period of time. So it's short-term thinking, and obviously rarely thought goes into the social or environmental impact. Hardly any laws or regulations, and absolutely no incentive to act any different. So we're about turning all that on its head and changing all of that. I would say if you wanted to get into this, you could probably put an event on for every topic and you could get someone to talk about it in depth. There's that much to cover, so I'm just going to give a wee summary to get us going. Hello. So I'll take buildings as an example. So what's the problem with buildings? Currently, our homes and our buildings leak far too much heat, which is having a negative impact on the environment. New builds aren't built to last, and the materials that we use are non-organic. So the materials we use are actually embodied with carbon. So because they don't last, we're tearing them down after 20 years, so we're not only having a negative impact while we're building them, but while we're bringing them down. Also, only 20% of the materials that we use to build buildings are locally sourced. So even wood, we're getting that imported from Europe and elsewhere, which is obviously having a massive impact on the environment. So what we're seeing, and another thing is waste. So the materials that we use are not only bad for the environment, but this concept of waste, we need to eradicate that totally. There shouldn't be any such thing as waste. We live on one planet. It's not linear, it's got to go somewhere. So the section on resources is about how we turn this waste into a resource. And recycling is obviously a failure. That should be a very, very last option. So what we're saying is we've got 2.5 million homes in Scotland. We've got to insulate all of them, and we'll build to last. So buildings should be for 60 to 100 years using organic materials. And a big thing of this is we're going to start a process of reforestation. So this is calling for 50% of the Scottish land to go through a process of reforestation, which means that wood we'll have an endless supply of wood which we can use not only for construction but other areas of life too. So it's all about shortening the supply chain and being a lot more self-sufficient, buildings that will last. And yet if buildings are damaged, then let's try and repair them and renovate them rather than just bringing them down. And if demolition does have to happen, then as I said, let's build recycling plants. So obviously to do this we need thousands of skilled workers, semi-skilled managers, accountants, etc. And pretty much like everything in here, we're calling for national companies to have centralised planning for this to make it happen. So a national housing company would be set up to organise this, and because there will be other companies like this that obviously got to link in and be connected and have the same goals, etc. So this will take a massive amount of training for the workforce. We need to get into schools and universities, not only to incentivise this, that they become the workers of the Green New Deal generation, but also to teach them about the historical context of why climate change happened in the first place, the politics, the economics, etc., so that it never happens again. And so I don't go on too long. Basically, every single area follows the same process. It'll highlight the problem, the negative impact we're having, and then come up with these revolutionary ideas for what's required to happen. So these jobs will be high quality, they'll be well paid, we'll be living more fulfilling lives, we're going to have stronger communities, and we'll have a system which is much more humane than what we've got just now. So as I said, this is a massive engineering project alongside an industrial strategy where we will actually make things again and we'll be pioneering new ideas. And obviously we're calling for independence to make this happen. We need the full powers of independence to transform our economy, and that's how this will happen. So obviously it's got a massive international element to this. This isn't us being about insular, it's about experimenting with what works, then sharing it with the rest of the world. And I think Green New Deals like this could be achieved everywhere. This could be a blueprint, but important to say that everybody's priorities and the local resources that they'll need to tap into will be different. Each will have different challenges. With electricity and heating, we're obviously going to tap into a renewable energy. Hydrogen is quite a big thing, and I know there can be dirty hydrogen, but the hydrogen we're calling for is created through a process of electrolysis, which is still being experimented on, and that's going to bring in universities and whatnot to get this to a high standard. But if we do this, then we would be world leading in this. It's through a process of water and electricity. Obviously we need to transform our culture. We're calling for pretty much deconsumerisation, where we don't need to feel like we need to buy stuff that we don't need, coming down on advertisers, putting bans in place where they shouldn't be selling us stuff that's bad for us. We should be incentivising things that's good for us. And if we don't buy things that we don't need, we've got more time for more enjoyable things, and we'll be much happier in the process. But one thing to say is, a lot of people think, oh, we're going to have to ration, this is going to take us back to the 18th century nonsense. This will improve our lives drastically, and there's fully ideas in this. So for example, with resources, rather than us buying things, we can lease items. So the producer is then responsible for the product from the start to the end of its life. And the idea is that if they're responsible for that, they lease it to us, we pay a deposit, we come back, they then have an incentive to make the product last, to use materials which will last. Total opposite of fast fashion, for example. Food, we're calling for a process of agroecology and growing our own food through LED lighting, which is obviously still very experimental. But if we get this right, then say you take an acre of land and you're growing food and it's inside, you can put layers of that. So you say 40 layers, that's 40 acres. And you wouldn't be restricted by things like weather conditions. We would have this food supply all year round. Transport's obviously massive. It emits 37% of all Scotland's carbon emissions. So again, we bring public transport into our own hands, and we transition to a mixture of battery and hydrogen. And of course we learn from the whole oil disaster that actually if by selling electricity and heating and having it organised publicly, we can halve everybody's heating bills, but still make a massive profit which will more than pay for the Green New Deal. So this is the kind of thinking. Land, again, massive. There's 450 landowners own half of Scotland's private land, and they use it for ridiculous things like grouse moors, which pretty much any other use of land would be more productive. So as I say, a big process of reforestation, and it would be introducing wildlife and predators again. It's a really interesting move there. So yeah, I just say this is honestly rammed with ideas that makes a very clear vision of what our future would look like. And at Weal, basically the rest of this year, we are focusing on campaigning for this over 2020. What we want to do is tour the whole of Scotland and make sure that everybody knows about this, because we're not in the mainstream media a lot, don't know if you've noticed. So we need to get this message out here, but we really want to get more experimental and think Bernie Sanders and think momentum and more peer-to-peer stuff. I mean, I was saying to Pat that during the IndieRef, my first meeting was in Edinburgh, Rick, and then I discovered Weal and I moved through to Glasgow and I was going to their meetings, and now I bloody work for them. It's been 4 years. But if we can get more folk engaged, and I really, really think that this can do it. We've not only got the student movement that's rising, but obviously we've got the independence movement, and we've got COP26, and obviously we want to put an alternative COP on. So yeah, I don't want to go on too much.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
Yes, great one. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.